Well, welcome everybody. Just a quick introduction. The three of us were getting together after a conversation with Jennifer McCary, who's the BGSU Chief Diversity and Belonging Officer. And really the conversation is get the three of us together and talk about our personal experiences, but more specifically kind of what's happening within our own community, but nationally when we talk about relationships within law enforcement and then the minority community as well. As part of that process, I thought maybe it'd be a good opportunity for us just to kind of introduce ourselves, give us a little background of who we are, where we're from, and then from there we can obviously start that dialogue. Unfortunately, I know this isn't the best method to do it. I would love to do this in person, which I know each of you would as well. But yeah, this could be our first step in really continuing this dialogue. So that being said, my name's Michael Campbell. I'm the Director of Public Safety here at BGSU, also the Chief of Police here at BGSU, so kind of a dual role in that fashion. My professional experience has been, I spent a little time in the private sector working for some companies based on loss prevention, but got into law enforcement a little over 23 years ago. Really unique in the fact that all my law enforcement experience has actually been in university of law enforcement. Spent some time at the University of Toledo before having an opportunity here to come to BGSU, and eventually in my current role as Director and Chief of Police here at BGSU. I actually grew up in Michigan, fairly small town in Michigan. Graduated high school there, went to a small college in Michigan. Played some basketball there as I got my undergrad, and then from there I got my master's degree actually here at BGSU. From there, just to give you a little sense of at least the community that I grew up in, was predominantly white community. Really got my experience and exposure to people that were necessarily different than me, based on maybe race or cultural things as well. Really through basketball. Just growing up, looking for opportunities to find pickup games and other things. I would go into the city as well and just really try and find games, interact with different people. And I'll tell you, over the years, I mean, it's been great as far as really building those connections through basketball and other avenues. But having the opportunity to do those things really gave me an opportunity to meet other people. Like I said, they were different from me. And in all honesty, really developed some positive relationships and some great friendships over the years. So that, I know it's just pretty brief, a little bit about myself, but Marvin, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Good morning, everyone. It's both an honor and a privilege to be here amongst such a diverse group. And I say diverse group as far as our backgrounds and our experiences. I found I interact with people with different perspectives and experiences throughout life. I always grow as a person and learn more. A little bit about me. I'm currently the CEO and founder of Blue Force Mobile Training Team, which we do consultant area of leadership development and implicit bias management. But also I'm the CEO of Big Brothers, Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Northwestern Ohio. And I enjoy working with the community and also supporting our youth. As far as my background, I worked a little over 2.5 decades in law enforcement, full-time as a police officer, service officer, working my way up to police commander. And then in 2009, I retired and started working under the United States Army Intelligence Center Contract of Excellence, where I conducted and designed training for specialized units within the military. During that period, I went back to further my education, a master's in criminal justice, MBA, specialization in human resource management, and later obtained my PhD. And my area of study was implicit bias and how it impacts our decision-making process. And that's kind of what brought me here today and make me excited, feel excited about having this type of discussion.
How you guys doing? I'm Michael Huger. I'm the head men's basketball coach here at Bowling Green State University. I'm from New York City, Harlem to be exact. I grew up in Harlem during the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It was a time where Harlem was all black, and it was a different era for me growing up in that type of environment. I remember at 12 years old having to make a decision of whether I want to hang out with the guys from my building who want to do bad things of selling drugs and using drugs, or go up the street and hang out with guys who want to do the right thing, going to school, playing basketball. At the time, our goal was just to see 21 if we can get to that age. And, I realized basketball was my way out at a young age, and really wanted to pursue it, and the hard work paid off at the end. I got a scholarship to come to Bowling Green State University, and that was my first real interaction with white people. Only interaction I had in Harlem was my AAU coaches and my teachers, and that wasn't a real friendship or anything like that. But coming to Bowling Green, I remember the first day walking across campus, going through the Union where everybody intersects, and I remember just looking around, and all I could see was white people, and it was like, man, what did I get myself into here? I saw one black person way on the other side, and I was like, man, there's two of us over here. So it was a lot of fun. My first experience, I met a guy, Greg Shepard, white guy here on campus, and we became friends. And growing up, we never talked about race in my household. The biggest thing was watch out for the police, and stay away from the police. You don't want to have no involvement with the police, and basically all my life I avoided police officers. But going back to college, getting a chance to know Greg, and teaching me about different types of music. I got into rock music and all types of stuff, just hanging with those guys. And he got into rap music, so all of the other stuff kind of changed, and got a chance, was fortunate enough to play 12 years professional basketball in Europe, and it was a different experience. The only real racism that I saw was out in Finland. That was the biggest thing that I saw, and other than that, I don't know if it was because I was an athlete, or anything like that, but didn't really experience a lot of it. Played 2 years in Holland and 9 years in Belgium, and didn't experience any of that. Been coaching here now as the head coach, this going into my sixth season at Bowling Green, and it's been great. It's been great over here. Really haven't dealt with anything like that as far as law enforcement or anything. So it's been a different experience for me, but I definitely understand where people are coming from in the movement.
Well, thanks, Michael. Thanks, Marvin, for introducing yourselves, kind of giving a little background history, or maybe who we are, or at least what our experience has maybe been. I know that's just a touch of it. I think, Michael, you brought up a great point. Just your first experience at BGSU and coming to campus, and maybe what your relationship has been with law enforcement, or maybe hasn't been. I can tell you, just here at BGSU, we have a lot of conversations with our officers about interacting with our community early for that very reason. So unlike maybe a municipality, maybe Marvin, where you have dealt with here at the university, our population changes quite a bit each year. And it truly is individuals from across the world that come here. So it's really tough to tell, what personal experiences people have had, whether those are positive and negative. When we talked about dealing with law enforcement, maybe it isn't even a direct involvement. Maybe it is just something that they've learned through family, or just through friends, or just hearing stories, or those kind of things, and they form kind of those perceptions, or at least how they feel like they should interact with law enforcement. So one of the conversations we have quite often with our officers is, without knowing these things, it's really incumbent upon us to reach out early. And that focus, just go out there, interact with the public, have those conversations, start to build those relationships, and really ultimately really build that trust. Because if you've had a negative interaction with a law enforcement officer, or maybe you have a viewpoint of a law enforcement officer that isn't necessarily positive, we don't want that to be the lasting impression, because ultimately, you're coming to BGSU for education. You're coming to BGSU to accomplish one of those personal goals, and we look at it as we're a support measure in that. Ultimately, we want to get you to that final goal. We want to provide that support. We want to be a partner, really, in that mission for the students. So getting out there early, having some conversations with those students, talking about what those experiences are, and hopefully building that trust. So if there is something going on or they're looking for a resource, they feel comfortable reaching out to us.
You made a couple of good points there, Michael. Number one, one of the three key, well, not one of, three key components of implicit bias is lack of awareness, lack of understanding, and lack of empathy. And if you would have asked me I retired in 2009, and probably a couple of years after that, was there a legitimate reason to fear the police within the Black community? I would have probably told you no, because I know more good officers than I know bad officers. So if you don't hang in those circles, you have no understanding. But like you said, we don't realize, especially in this world of social media, that you may not have to have that direct contact, but just seeing it on TV when officers make a mistake or do something illegal and wrong, or hearing about it, or sharing your friends' experiences through conversation. And I can tell you when people ask me, why did I do the research I did, it was because of a personal experience I experienced. Growing up in the law enforcement community, I only seen good officers because that's who I encircled myself with. And I was fortunate in our department, the bad officers didn't last long because of our culture. They was usually forced out or terminated or even arrested in some cases. It wasn't until after I retired and I moved back to the Virginia area and was working, I said, we're doing contract work for the government, and my lifestyle kind of enhanced a little bit because of the pay. And I was my first gated community to where I first had an initial contact with an officer. And I was a victim. I don't want to say racism. I was just a victim of implicit bias because of how the conversation shifted when he realized I was an officer. It was this stop didn't have valid probable cause. How he interacted indicated that he felt I didn't belong there. And it wasn't until he asked to search my car for the second time, and I repeated, "Hey, if you can tell me why, I have no problem. But if not, no, you can't search my car." And then he asked about weapons. I said, "Well, yes, there's a weapon in my car, but I have a carry to conceal, and I'm retired law enforcement." And then the whole conversation pivoted, and we end up talking like we knew each other forever. And I've done extensive research in the area of implicit bias, and I had to learn about racism, stereotypes, and prejudice. And a racist is a racist is a racist. So the conversation wouldn't even have pivoted if he was a racist. I think it was his biases, and our biases formed through our lived and learned experiences. And it's been his experience, unfortunately, not to see a person of color in that area. So he went straight to investigative mode. And that's one of the main reasons I want to be on this platform is to educate both sides. One, on how to properly identify to racism or implicit bias and respond in a way that'll keep you safe. Because I've noticed too during my studies, a lot of these incidents, though wrong, and the officer, somewhat some of the officers' part, and that's only a few, is how we react to it. But then also to educate the officers on how our implicit biases may impact our decision-making process. And what I found very interesting during my study and through conversations and doing conferences and lectures with people of color and also the law enforcement community is I really get it on both sides. As a person of color, I know how it feels. As a law enforcement officer who's always trying to do the right thing and you're getting painted with a broad brush, I know how it feels. And what I find interesting is when you look at the data on both sides, there's only a small few causing problems. But I always let my brothers in blue and my sisters in blue know the difference between the two is one is losing their life and one is losing their freedom at an unreasonable rate. And in the research area, we call that a phenomenon. It shouldn't be happening. And so I don't think we can, we've spent over 40 billion over the past couple of decades trying to train our way out of it, but I don't think we really diagnosed the problem. And I can tell you the conversation I'm having with both of you all is how I found it works. When I do training with law enforcement officers and implicit bias management, I don't set up an atmosphere of a lecture. We have the conversation. And I also let them see how the other side from their perspective without feeling attacked. And I do the same thing within the communities of color. Hey, this is what an officer experienced. This is how they perceive things. And this is maybe some of their biases. And the one thing I found consistently is when both sides get a chance to see the other perspective and not when it's in a heated moment, they both develop that awareness, that understanding, and the empathy. And I think what we're doing right now is only going to educate us and create a bigger space for that conversation to take place.
I got a chance to speak with my players about the George Floyd death. Our guys were upset. Our team we probably have about 80% blacks on our team, and we got a chance to just sit down and speak about the death and how it occurred. He was doing the right things in our eyes, and he still got murdered in that situation. And we were looking at how much more can we do? What else can we possibly do? He did everything right. The guys spoke about peaceful rallies that we had and trying to make changes. And, our players thought that, we had quite a few that thought like we weren't heard when we were peaceful. But when we started to riot and do the things like that, looting and everything, we were heard then. And I spoke to them about, that's the media portrayal of what went on. I said they had it in a situation where they showed the peaceful rallies and nothing happened, and it felt like we weren't doing anything. But as soon as we started to riot, I said that's when everything seemed to change in your minds. But it didn't. It was working of what we were doing. I said, the one thing about a riot is we think it's great when it's far away from us, but as soon as it get a little close to us, now it's like, whoa, 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 stop, fellas. And I said, we can't control a riot in that way. I said, once it starts, it's hard to stop. I said, you can't just stop it. And it doesn't affect you until now it's that store that you like to go to, or now it's your neighborhood or down the street from you. I said, or better yet, the Stroh Center. I said, we had nothing really to do with any of the stuff that's going on, but a riot we can't control. And if they decide to burn down the Stroh Center, where are we going to play? Where are we going to practice? Did y'all think of that? And then it kind of changed. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand now. I said, yeah, you understand now, but during that time, you guys thinking that's the way, and that's definitely not the way. I said the way we do it is by educating ourselves. I said let's educate ourselves first, fellas. Let's educate ourselves so we have a better understanding of the situation of what's going on, and then now we can educate others and educate our families. I said when you guys have children, then you're able to speak to your kids about racism and how it is and what you should do in order to prevent that. And that's the best thing that we can do at this stage is how can we help at this stage, and that's the way we help is through educating ourselves. The thing I noticed about the youth now is I remember the situation happening with Rodney King for me back in the 90s. And I remember it being out in LA and all of the stuff happening. But as a 21-year-old, you're looking at it like, it's really not affecting me at this stage out here in Ohio. It's not, I see what's going on, I understand, but it didn't affect me at that time. What our youth don't understand is they're in the same mindset. And I know that. And we as older gentlemen trying to teach that to them, they don't understand at this stage. It's more like, all right, let's get it over with. Let's go back to the next thing. Let's go back to normal living. It doesn't really affect them until 4 or 5 years down the line when they're trying to get that job or something like that. And now they're being denied because of the color of their skin. And now they'll understand what we're fighting for right now. And that's the thing that I don't think a lot of the youth understand today. And that's the one discussion that we had with our players.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys, Marvin, you were talking about pieces of training and the research you've done as well. I mean, that continues to be a focus. I can tell you from the BGSU perspective in our police departments is really focusing on those aspects of training. We really focus on kind of this 5-pillar approach that talks about building trust in our community, talks about providing fair access to our services to our community, talks about being objective, being part of that team. And then, we talk a lot about too, this safety and security piece. And what I mean by that is, part of this focus is that, people from time to time are going to do things that are wrong. But I think it's incumbent upon law enforcement, and this is what we train on, is to evaluate these things, talk about root cause, why did this occur? And then evaluate, what's the best next step? Just because something has occurred that may be even illegal, does it make sense to arrest somebody on it? what's really going to be best for your community, what's going to make your community safe, and what's going to be supportive of your community when we look at those things. So we really focus on some of those training pieces. I know we have discussed a little bit on implicit bias too. We do annual trainings focused on that as well. I don't remember, Marvin, if you actually mentioned this or not, but we have taken the Harvard test as well to try and identify those things, really just to make people aware, make you aware that it is something that you have to work through, that everyone builds those implicit bias pieces, and recognizing those things and understanding what that means. We do a lot of different training. Some of it is required, but we do quite a bit of in-service training outside of sending people away from training. And part of that training really focuses on some unique aspects, because we really want our officers to be well-rounded. What I mean by that is a couple of examples. We partnered with some members of BDSU, and we've done recently some training based on gender identity, because our officers are interacting with a whole multitude of faculty, staff, and students. And even these basic conversations like we're having now, they may say something that might offend somebody or shut somebody down in a conversation, really unintentionally. But I think having a good baseline understanding as you're talking with somebody, what your words can sound like or how they might be perceived, and really building that relationship. We partnered with Multicultural Affairs to do some different events. Michael, similar to what you were talking about, is really starting to try and build that relationship at a level where it can be comfortable, some casual conversations. So a number of years ago, we started an event called Together We Ball, which was really based on partnering law enforcement with our multicultural students, and getting them together in an environment that is hopefully low stress, casual. They can have conversations. This particular event was based on basketball, which I bought into right away. Michael, I'm sure you would as well, because it's a game I love to play, even though I'm a lot older now and it's more difficult to play. And so we actually partnered our officers with the students. So there was officers on the same team as the students. And that was really by design to start that conversation. So it wasn't us versus them. So I say it is because I think it was positive to do it that way. I'm sure others say it was because the students would destroy our officers in a basketball game. But at the end of the day, some really positive conversations, I think, came of it. It was, like I said, it was a relaxed atmosphere. We have a DJ, we bring in some food, and we invite community members, and try and do it on like a Sibs and Kids weekend, so the students can invite their younger sisters or brothers as well, and really make it a community event. It became so successful that we actually, and this was the students that we're talking about, as they like to do more. So last year we actually started, as a part of Together We Ball, a kickball game as well, similar to what we did in basketball. So we actually did a couple events last year, and we were planning to do one again this spring, but for obvious reasons, we didn't get a chance to accomplish that due to what was happening with the pandemic. But I think those things are great opportunities for our officers to get out there, have conversations, even outside the uniform a little bit, and talk about what people's experiences are, really try to connect at a level that is comfortable for both parties.
And Michael, that's a great approach. It's really taking the time and effort to create a space of common ground and common interests, and to where you can have that difficult conversation, because it's never easy. I tell anybody when I'm doing a course or just talking with friends and stuff about diversity and race and different cultures, if you don't have that trust, that's going to be a very challenging conversation, because everybody's going to be focused on their perspective. But if you can create that trust or for that common interest, you'll find those conversations being more open, more honest. And I'm telling you, to this very date, I'm still learning. And you mentioned the IAT test. So I take it every 4 or 5 months just to test my levels of implicit bias towards my own culture. And just through conditioning, and at the age, anywhere between age 2.5 years to 5 years, That's when the implicit bias develops. It's through our lived and learned experiences. And so there's plenty of studies that show even people of color have their own biases within their own race because of how society has conditioned us to believe, this is the norms within our culture. This is how it is within our culture. And what we see on TV, you don't see a whole lot of, especially prior to 10 years ago, you didn't see a lot of Blacks in powerful positions and leadership positions and things of that nature. So we didn't think it was actually possible. So that's one thing, is how can we recondition each other through the sharing of information in a respectful manner and an open-minded way. Also, Michael Anthony, you mentioned about educating. So when I talk to the youth, what's the next step? Okay, you protest, you got their attention. Do you even know what's next? And what amazed me was, never thought about that. I was just out here to be heard. So now you're being heard. But I think too, the adults in society have to help coach them through this process. We can't tell them how to do it because this is their movement. They own this movement. But we can give them the tools. And this can be through voting, get involved in politics, going to these political meetings, the census, registering to vote. There's so many different avenues you can take, because a lot of them right now are just confused. They just know to show up, protest, but they don't know what next is. And Michael Anthony, you mentioned it too earlier. Once you protest peacefully and it starts to pivot out of control, because historically, you look at every protest, majority of them start off peaceful, but the longer they went, the more they start pivoting to the negative. Then you lose the narrative. And they have groups they've identified, such as the Boogaloos, Antifa. They have their own interests that they take advantage of and try to pit the two cultures together also. So we got to be aware of that part, educating them on that part, how their conversation is being hijacked. So my mindset is educate, 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 talk, 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 because we can't buy our way out of this. We can't arrest our way out of this. We can't protest our way out of this.
The biggest thing for me now is to understand that voting is power. So getting our guys to register to vote, absentee ballots, all of the stuff that they need to do to vote, know who they're voting for. A lot of these positions are elected officials, and we can make change that way. The one thing I do want to do is get you guys in to speak with my team. Chief Campbell, we already spoke about that. Marv, we can get a chance to get you on as well, and would love to get you guys to come in. If we can do it in person, I would love to do that. If the circumstances don't allow, then we can get on a call and get you guys on just to discuss. I want to get you guys on separately because you both have great things to talk about, and I don't want to take away from one or the other, but definitely would love to get you guys on in the near future to speak with my team. I think they can be enlightened by what you both have to offer. So love to do that. And, hopefully we can do that soon.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I appreciate the opportunity, Michael. Anytime we can get in, talk with your team and have a candid conversation of how they're feeling and what those relationships have been. And again, I couldn't stress more, and I think this is a feeling you'll see across our department is we are partners in this. So we can't do this alone, but also, we're supportive in the fact that we understand why our students are here. And we want to help them achieve those goals and being a partner in our community. So yeah, I would love that opportunity. Same with you, Marvin, as well. I mean, I think you provide obviously a wealth of knowledge and insight that can be hugely beneficial to the things that we do. So as we move forward, a great opportunity to partner with you as well. I know this is kind of our first conversation, and I think it's been a great chance to talk to each of you. I don't know if you guys anything you want to wrap up here. Hopefully, and I can't see this being the last, but I'll say it anyways. Hopefully, this is not our last conversation, and hopefully, it's a conversation we can do in person here in the near future as well.
All I need to add to that is I agree. I look forward to further conversations, whether in this space or a space we can develop. Because I think the only solution to this problem is to educate each other and to keep the conversation going.
I thank you guys, both of you, for this opportunity. Thank Jennifer as well for getting us all together. and looking forward to seeing you guys out there and, when all of this is all over. Thank you.
Great. Well, hey, I really appreciate it. You guys take care. And like I said, hopefully we'll be talking soon.